Okay guys, just finished up a spoon bit for John Hines, and probably can't see me in the camera. Anyway, he wanted me to do a short video on how to sharpen these spoon bits. So I can get him back out of the lathe here, and hopefully this is showing up. Let me go around the back side of the camera and make sure. Okay. When it comes time to sharpen these, what I do is take a fat magic marker, wide magic marker. A little trick I learned back when I was making knives, and sharpening knives before I started making knives. And color the flat part of that spoon bit with a magic marker, so that all the flat is colored solid. And the thing with these spoon bits is that you don't really sharpen them. You do what they call lapping, for those of you that are familiar with metalwork. And what you want to do is lay that down on a good flat surface, like your table saw table or bandsaw table, and you only sharpen the flat part of it, or lap the flat part of it. You don't do anything to the rounded side. And hopefully this will show up too, I don't know, but this is something that I picked up just at, I think it was Home Depot, and what it is a flooring tile, and it's just a slate tile, and I've checked it with a straight edge, and it's perfectly flat. And if I have anything to lap on, anything that I need to lap, this is what I normally do it on, because I know that it's perfectly flat, it's good and heavy, so it doesn't scoot around. But for the video, I'm just going to use my bandsaw table here. But it doesn't take a very big piece of sandpaper, and I would say probably I wouldn't use anything coarser than 400 grit to lap these with. The heavier the grit, the more of a burr it'll make, but the heavier the grit you use, the faster it'll wear the bit out too. And honestly, these shouldn't take very much sharpening at all. So you don't want to overdo the sharpening. If it's cutting fine, leave it alone. But you can get you a piece of sandpaper like this, or you can even use a smaller piece of sandpaper. I cut my sandpaper, if you saw the stem repair tutorial that I did, I cut my sandpaper, some of it, a lot of it, into 1/16 of an inch sheets. And if I can get one out, well, how about I get several of them out? Anyway, you can use a piece as small as that. You just need to make sure that you hold it good and flat on your table or whatever you're using to sharpen the bit. And a bigger piece of sandpaper is a little bit easier to get your fingers around and be sure that it's held good and flat. If you let the sandpaper get a hump, a crease or anything in it, then it won't do a good job of sharpening it. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to go about doing this, but maybe I can move it around to this side. Okay, I promise guys, soon I'm going to get set up where I can do video without having to do all this moving around. Let me zoom in on this a little bit here where hopefully you can see it better. Maybe. But anyway, color it with a magic marker, be sure that your sandpaper is on the edge. Hold it down good and flat. And it doesn't make a whole lot of difference which direction that you go, but depending on which direction you go will depend on which side of the bit the burr is left on. If you go back and forth, then you'll end up with a smaller burr. So this is the cutting edge, this side over here of the bit. So what I like to do, hold my paper good and flat, and take that and just gently slide it across there. And I want my burr to end up on this side, not the other side. So I'm pulling the metal back this way. So just hold it on there and just lightly rake it across the sandpaper. I should have checked the grit on this paper. This is 320, which is alright for the first sharpening. But if it just needs a little touch up, I'd probably use 600 or 800. You know, if it needs more, you can drop down to about 400 if you want to. I just wouldn't work it a whole lot. But just make sure that you keep it down flat and try to keep the same amount of pressure on both sides. Try to keep the pressure right in the center. And as you push it, it's hanging on the edge of my bandsaw. Just push it across, pick it up, set it down good and flat, push it across. And as I said, this is hard to do. Wrong-handed for being able to videotape it. You can move it back and forth if you want to, like this, but you won't end up with as good of an edge. So if you can always sharpen, pushing the metal back toward the cutting side, cutting edge of the bit, then it'll do a better job. But just real lightly, run it across there just a few times, and you can see almost, I don't know, I probably did it less than a half a dozen times, but almost all the black is almost gone off of that bit. And all you want to do is create a micro burr on this edge. You may not even be able to see the burr. Sometimes you can feel it with a fingernail. But as I said, all you're doing is just making a microscopic burr on this edge by running it across the sandpaper like that. So John, hopefully that helps. And since this is a brand new bit, I'm going to run it across just a few more times, just to be sure that it is perfectly flat. I'm really not putting any pressure on it. I'm just being sure that I hold it on there flat. Make sure that it doesn't try to rock up on one side or the other. The edge of this bandsaw is rough, and the rounded part is hanging on that. That's why I like to use that floor tile. It's got a good smooth side on it too. But for the video here, just a few slides across the sandpaper, guys, is all that you need. Basically no pressure. Just run it across through there. And if your bit, when you're sharpening, if you get it unflat, a dip in it or anything, when you color it with a magic marker and go back to sharpen it again, if you've got a low spot, it'll show up because of the magic marker. It'll show up as dark. But anyway, excuse me, that's how to sharpen these. And as you can see, it takes less than 5 minutes to sharpen one. All you need is something flat and some sandpaper. And fixing to chuck this up in the lathe here and test it. And I'll do a little short video of that. I think everybody's probably already seen a demo of the spoon bits, but I'll do one especially for you, Mr. John. Okay, guys, I've already drilled my pilot hole. Excuse me, can't talk tonight. I've already drilled my pilot hole in there. Get some of the golden liquid, some sun drop. And if I can find my bit. What I've been using here lately is this. It's kind of a brad point bit. It's got the point on the end of it that helps it self-center. And I think this one is a 7/16. But anyway, I think J. Allen recommends using a 3/8 pilot hole for a 3/4. This bit of John's is a 13/16. So, but I don't think that's too critical. You can use 3/8, 1/2 inch, 7/16, or even 5/8, whatever you want to use. I don't think that's too critical. One thing about it, and I've been busier making these than I have testing them. Mine works so good that I've not spent really much time testing it. Ed James and Tony Warner, they're all loving theirs, and I love mine, so I've really not spent much time testing these. You know, if you got something that works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They've been working great, so I've not had a lot of time to spend testing what different size pilot hole, you know, how much of a difference that makes. They may cut a little easier or stay a little cooler if you drill a bigger pilot hole, say maybe a 5/8 for the 3/4 bit. Not sure about that, but you guys can experiment with that and see what you come up with and give me some feedback and let me know. But 7/16 pilot, and these are not made to spin as fast or drill as fast as a regular bit. So got my lathe set on the lowest speed in the medium section, which is 600 RPM. And I think that's about what J. Allen recommends, about 600 or 800 RPM when you're drilling with these. But let's drill a hole. I already started the hole a few minutes ago, like I started to say, because I tested the end of it. But only ran it in maybe a 1/2 inch, so we'll drill a little bit more with it and see how she does. And like with any bit, you know, don't over force it, try to drill too fast, and overheat the bit. You know, back it out, let the bit cool a little bit. You know, and if you're not getting long shavings like that, if you're just getting dust, the bit's not good and sharp. And I'm just drilling on some old yellow pine, a yellow pine 2x4 that I ripped up to test these with, to make sure they were sharp before I sent them out. And some of the guys on the Pipe Makers forum saw one of the demos that I did and bashed the heck out of me because I was using yellow pine. He said, "Well, you ain't even drilling briar." But You know, maybe those guys can afford a $20 or $30 block of briar to practice drilling holes on, but I can't. So if I can rip up a $3 or $4 2x4 and test them on that, even though you get a little bit different shaving, if it'll cut the 2x4, then I can get a good idea of what it's going to do on briar. But let's drill a little bit more. For some reason, the adjuster lockdown on my quill keeps wanting to loosen up as I'm drilling, so sometimes I have to reach around and hold that lockdown on my quill to make sure it doesn't get too loose. If it gets too loose, it'll let it wobble. But hopefully you can see those shavings there. Again, don't try to drill too fast. Just let the bit do its job. And when you get to the bottom of your pilot hole, which you can't go all the way to the bottom of your chamber with the pilot hole because of the shape of your the bottom shape of your chamber. But when you do run out of the pilot hole and the spoon bit is having to actually drill rather than ream or scrape, basically the spoon bit is a scraper. But when you get to the end of that, you will start getting just fine dust or shavings rather than the long shavings. And if this was briar and not soft pine, it would look a whole lot different. The shavings and all. Don't know how well you'll be able to see that. Don't think I got drilled all the way to my bottom of my pilot hole, but anyway, that's just as smooth as it can be. So these things really save a lot of time and having to sand and dress up your chambers, and hopefully everybody else will love them as much as I do. But thanks for watching, guys, and John, hopefully that helps and you'll be having an incoming bid on the way, buddy.